hello, and welcome back to Lap of the World. My name is Richard, and if you're new to the channel, we mostly do road trips and racetracks here. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, don't forget to click the subscribe button down below, along with the bell, and that way you'll get a notification anytime we're able to post a video checking another track off our list, or like today, where we are not at a track, but rather just discussing something that is definitely related to the hobby. So we've come out on a balmy November afternoon here to 60 degrees or so in Tennessee to talk about something, or again, that we've covered probably a few months ago. Now, on my trip to Memphis International Raceway, I compared a couple of free smartphone-based lap timer apps, or data logging apps, however you want to call it. We did the free version of RaceChrono as well as TrackAddict by HB Tuners. And that was, I think, a pretty solid comparison, and I've included both of those again with some caveats. I have this time the Pro version of RaceChrono, which also does video and will allow me to export full sessions offline for video production and data overlay and stuff like that. TrackAddict is unchanged because there is no premium version of it. However, we are going to try and check out the one of the premium versions of HB Tuner's other piece of software, which is the data overlay generating software called RaceRender. And we'll compare that to a free version of something similar called Dashware, but that's coming later. Now, the notable exclusion in the last test I did, or last comparison I did, was Harry's Lap Timer, and that's because, frankly, there's not a free version of Harry's Lap Timer. With comparing a premium stuff this time, though, Harry's is fair game, so I went out and spent my own money here, none of this is sponsored, bought the Grand Prix version of Harry's Lap Timer app, and I gave these all a whirl, more or less, at Summit Point with NS Expo, just to kind of see what gives, and if I could come to a decision myself of which one was going to be my go-to timing app going forward for both, I guess I would call it both self-coaching as well as video production. We are simply talking about smartphone-based apps. The other big feedback I got last time, or the sort of the comment winner last time, was, you should try an AIM Solo 2 unit or setup there. And sure, I'd love to, but I'm not going to spend the, I think, $399 and some change that it would take to get that setup up and running. Similarly, I don't have anything here from, RaceRender or any, there are probably several that I'm forgetting. RaceKeeper, I think, is another one, that are these big data logging, semi-pro almost, or borderline professional data logging suites. And that's because they range in price from $400 to $1,400 or more, depending on how many boxes you check in the options category. So anyway, we'll find a place to park real quick, and we'll continue this discussion. Let's jump right in here. I'm going to frame this real quick, saying that this is, again, an opinion piece. I'm not comparing these as far as absolute performance in any category or going feature by feature. This is simply how well these apps worked for my purposes, and my purposes are being able to see what I'm doing in the car while I'm driving in a succinct and efficient way, and then also be able to easily export data and or video to share with you guys. And that's how I use them. Your mileage may vary. If you're an amateur race team and you're developing a car and need to, pipe a bunch of sensor data into the apps, you may have different results. If you don't care about exporting the data to share with anybody and you just want to have it on your phone for when you're at the track to see what you're doing, that's maybe a different decision. And we'll kind of touch on those points as I go. But jumping right in, though, let's start with the app that we excluded from the last test because there is not a free version of it, and that is Harry's Lap Timer. Now, I've sprung for the Grand Prix version of this, I would call it the probably benchmark timing app program that there is out there. Nearly everybody with an iPhone uses it, certainly, and there is an Android version, which is the one that I'm using. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there that Harry's is not going to be my choice. And it's really nothing to do with how it performs in the car. It's more the after the fact where I got bogged down in the complexity. With Harry's lap timer, I really just have two small nits to pick and one what I would call a user advocacy problem. First, and more of a preference, when generating an overlay in the app, there's no way to divorce the previous or best lap time display from the countdown timer clock feature. Frankly, I don't see the point in the countdown. Please enlighten me in the comments if I'm missing some revelation there, but my point is that I would like to be able to choose those independently. Second, setting up a custom track is a distinctly non-trivial activity. It's not something that should often be necessary given the number of tracks available in Harry's, but if I wanted to quickly plug in a test loop to experiment with, say, showing a YouTube audience proper footage of the timer in use because I didn't have my phone's brightness up enough at the track, I can't do that very easily. My main issue, though, is app navigation, and compared to the others, it's more complex and less intuitive. Harry's lap timer is programmed in Germany by a German, presumably named Harry, and like many German automobiles, this is very powerful, but also very complicated. And when something goes wrong, it's not easy to figure it out yourself and DIY it. So I got stuck a couple of times trying to get video to sync with data, and found that if I got it wrong the first time, it was nigh impossible to undo and fix my divot. Now, I am not technically inept. I don't have a big ego about a lot of things, but I build my own computers. I'm a certifiable nerd. I know enough about programming to be dangerous, although I don't do it professionally at all. What I do, though, professionally, and as it happens, is I am the guy who translates between end users and software developers. And most of my, I guess a good chunk of my early career especially, was explaining to software developers that complexity isn't always a good thing, and click minimization is a real and laudable goal in life. And that's kind of really the only issue I have with Harry's, is it's maybe a little bit complex if you want to try and do... if you're trying to get fancy with it, it's hard to get fancy with it without really getting yourself kind of bogged down. So, having said that, again, I think it's probably great for what it is. Your mileage may vary. Please try these out on your own and don't just take my word for it. So that's where I stand on Harry's at this point. Now, the next app we're going to be talking about, moving alphabetically here, is one that I've tested the free version of before, but I've now stepped up to the RaceChrono Pro app for this round of testing. Now, I really liked this app before in the free version, although it did have limitations on the amount of data that could be exported for a given time range, as well as the basic app doesn't do video. This one does video, which I failed at, but will now go back and address. So, making amends for my oversight on not realizing that the video feature on RaceChrono required a second input other than just hitting the start button to actually start recording video. For better or worse, take that how you want. I've come out here to my local, one of my local mega churches' parking lot areas because they have a ring road big enough to facilitate moving the hundreds of people on Sunday morning in and out of the service. But it's also a mostly unbroken loop that I can drive without looking too weird on a Monday afternoon. So here I am, obviously minding all traffic laws and good sense. The video from the lap will not be anything to write home about unless I decide to speed it up and overlay it with some raucous engine noises. But anyway, to the point at hand, actually getting this sucker to do video. So I've got the app pulled up. We're at the start screen, so we're going to hit the start button. It's going to adjust itself and tell me I don't have a track selected, and the nearest one is my test loop. Great. Sounds good. We'll select that track, select the test loop, now it is ready to go. So once I cross the start-finish line, the data will start recording. The video will not until you do this. So you have to swipe right on the app, insert your Tinder joke here, and push the record button on the video. Now it is recording video and data, and you can go back and have either this view or I discovered if you swipe left, you can also have a sort of more analog looking speedometer with an altitude and a G meter. But for our purposes, really what we're interested in are lap times and then your delta to your best lap time so far, which is what we'll have here running. So I'm going to go and run a few laps of whatever we want to call this today, or Religious Ring Knoxville, and and then we'll come back and kind of talk about where we ended up with the video, in-app video. Because obviously this, with this app, there's nothing wrong with the data that it logs, and in fact, all 3 apps will log and export data just fine to either of the 2 video overlay software suites that we've been talking about today. This is the overlaid video created in the RaceChrono app on my phone and then exported as an already overlaid video. Ignoring the unfortunate mostly dashboard view, something I'll get to when we talk about the last app I tested, the overlay itself is concise and useful. RaceChrono is unique in displaying the time delta information on its in-app video, which I could see being very constructive for comparing one lap to another for coaching purposes. So RaceChrono, definitely still in the running in spite of the 2-step video functionality. That was honestly something that that was a facepalm on my part, that I didn't realize you had to do that. It's not a big deal. I do like the interface. I do like the video overlay that it generates by default on the app, and the fact that you can export that or upload it as is in case you don't have video editing software, or you don't want to go and deal with a separate software package to do your video overlays. Now, with the last one we'll talk about here is unchanged from our previous comparison, and that is TrackAddict by HP Tuners. TrackAddict is pretty amazing because it is, again, and this is a free app, like free 99, not paying a dime for it, and it is basically a fully functioned data logger on the level of Harry's or RaceChrono Pro. They give you all that functionality in the app. Where HP Tuners makes their money, though, is that it's definitely most easy if you're looking to export and share this stuff. It's definitely most simple to do that via RaceRender. Now, the basic version of RaceRender is free, but again, you're kind of limited in what you can, the video size you can generate, video length you can generate. But I went and I spent, I think, $30 on one of the semi-premium versions of RaceRender, so I can show you more about what that, more of what that's all about, rather. But we'll get to that here in a moment when we discuss the overlay software. But yeah, so this guy, the only problem I've had with TrackAddict so far is it has a finicky GPS, and I don't know why, because they're all using the same internal GPS in the phone. I don't run an external GPS right now, but for whatever reason, it seemed more sensitive to that than the other apps did, and I'll kind of get into that in my explanation here. First, the good stuff. TrackAddict's driving display, while not as stark and clean as RaceChrono's, is still easy to read, and once you've set an initial lap, it changes to show a predictive time with the running clock minimized, which I like. Also, once you set the app up to run video, it starts and syncs the video automatically when you've crossed the start-finish line for the first time after tapping the record button. The challenge I encountered with TrackAddict, though, was this. When I had it mounted higher up on the windshield in the NSX, it would record my out lap, but then the remaining laps were lumped into the same running time in the car. Here I am working an alleged 6+ minute lap of Summit Point, according to TrackAddict. Suspecting a weak GPS signal, I moved the mount to the bottom of the windshield in later sessions, and the app worked perfectly thereafter. However, I ran all 3 apps mounted in this fashion, higher up the windshield, and neither Harry's nor RaceChrono experienced the same issue. Or, they were at least able to interpolate enough to muddle through the weak signal and still generate usable data. TrackAddict's in-app video is no nonsense with basic data and is, as with the rest of the app, easy to get to and review with minimal navigation. Although I was not able to find a way to export an already overlaid video from the app, this should allegedly be possible, so that may just vary by device. Moving on from phone apps to overlay software, the 2 applications I trialed this time are Dashware and RaceRender. Dashware slipped under the radar for my earlier video, but would have been most appropriate there because it's free. I previously tried a free version of RaceRender, but for this video purchased one of their premium versions to remove some of the limitations present in the free version. Starting with Dashware, video from which is now running in the background, it's a pretty simple program, and although the user interface isn't the prettiest thing I've seen, it is intuitive to navigate and easy to use. You import video, imported data files, sync them, and then have a selection of gauge and data layouts to choose from. Dashware also caters to other hobbies, so not all of the gauge options are necessarily applicable to track driving, but they're worth noting if you're also a cyclist, pilot, or drone enthusiast, for instance. The overlays are clear, the render time is reasonable, and there are no limitations on the size or length of the input or output video files that I was able to find. The Dashware logo in the bottom corner is optional for the record. Referencing my previous video, the free version of RaceRender is pretty powerful, but does limit your output to 3 minutes of overlaid video. So enough for at least one full lap of most tracks in most cars, but still a limitation. For this comparison though, I purchased the cheapest version with unlimited video output length, the deluxe version. At about $40, this was my most expensive purchase for this video, and the RaceRender logo in that bottom corner is not optional, although it can be made small and semi-transparent. Now that said, the user interface does feel pretty premium, and it is very intuitive and slick to work with. Gauge options are plentiful, and it does include some accommodation to handle 360-degree video input or generate split-screen comparisons without needing a separate video editor. It works most efficiently when paired with the TrackAddict app, with not quite one click, but close enough, data and video import from your phone. RaceRender will, however, ingest any CSV and video combination that I was able to find. What you've been watching was actually data from Harry's lap timer overlaid on some GoPro video. Both of these overlay generators are pretty powerful, and both are very easy to use. I think Dashware is really a no-brainer for most use cases when price is considered. However, if you're a big fan of the TrackAddict phone app, you plan to try 360-degree video, or have, say, already spent the money for a YouTube comparison video, I think RaceRender is a little bit more polished product with a few more options overall. So where does that leave me with respect to my softwares of choice going forward? Well, having already spent the money, and I think that's key here, I have a preference for RaceChrono Pro for the in-car logging and, to an extent, video generation. And that's mainly on account of simplicity, ease of navigation, and the clarity of the display while driving. It is very uncluttered and very bold and bright, and you can easily see everything at a glance. Having said that, had I not already spent the money on RaceChrono Pro, I would be more than happy with TrackAddict from HP Tuners. That is an extremely robust application that they're giving you. I'm not going to say they should charge money, because then they might, but it is a very powerful app for what it is, and it's free. Now, once we're talking about after the fact, we're getting into post-production here. Even having not spent the money, I think RaceRender is probably, if you don't mind having the logo on there, getting a basic version of that still gives you more options for visible interest, from a video production quality standpoint, than Dashware does. If all you're interested in doing, though, is getting data, on track and then putting it out in a simple format to share with your friends or whoever else, then the combination of TrackAddict and Dashware is, that's pretty, it's hard to go wrong with that. So that the sort of life hack choice is get the free TrackAddict app, which is extremely powerful, export all that data out into Dashware, which is a free app, and you have, 85% of what you can do with some of the premium apps for no money. So, with all of that said, and after much ado, and having come to some conclusion, I think I'm going to go with RaceChrono Pro in the car and RaceRender on the computer. Now, that could change if one of these applications or programs does something to tick me off bad enough. It could change, and I will let you know if that happens, but that for right now is my opinion. I hope you found it entertaining, if not informative, And we're going to call it a video there for the day. I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video, if not at the track.